Okay, good morning. We are going to start our class today, and we're talking today about third culture kids and depression. I'll just quickly recap the definition of the TCK. We're looking at how we can counsel this unique population of young people, and the definition that we're working from is from David Pollock and Ruth Van Ryken, where it describes a third culture kid as a person who's spent a significant part of his or her developmental years outside of the parent's culture. Obviously, we've spoken already about the fact that can be in many different contexts, in many different ways. It can have frequent changes and frequent mobility. It can also be immigrants, refugees. It can be military, missionaries, and so on. So we're talking about a large and growing population of young people living outside of their passport country. So from that context, we move into the three realities common in these stories. The commonalities include cycles of transition, giving rise to multiple losses and grief that come out another way. So there's a cycle here going on of loss and grief, which we'll spend a lot of time on today. There's also these changes that are happening at critical stages of life, obviously in the developmental years as part of that definition, and so it interrupts traditional processes for learning cultural balance and belonging. So while every young person might struggle with identity, there's a unique struggle that TCKs go through, and changing cultural worlds that result in broken relationships and difficulty or reluctance in establishing relationships. And we're going to look at a case study today that touches on that. And so relationships and attachment and conflict resolution and all of these things begin to become unique issues for TCKs. The case study I want us to start off with, I'll just go through this, and as you're kind of reflecting and listening to this, be picking up on what factors we need to explore more. So Sophia is 14, she's from Spain, she's a new student in a school context. She comes to a school counselor 6 weeks after school starts. She's unable to go to class, she's tearful. She expresses she's been crying every night for the past 2 weeks. They moved to Dubai for Sophia's dad's job, and they live in a beautiful large villa next to the beach. She's very close with her family, two twin sisters younger than her, doing very well, so she feels as though something is wrong with her. Her mom has also expressed concern, as Sophia is usually very bubbly and funny and was very popular in her last school, but now it's coming out that she's spending her lunch breaks hiding in the bathroom. So as you just kind of get an overview of Sophia's case, what are the types of things, the factors, the key factors that you would want to pick out of this and explore, especially in light of third culture kid theories? I'll let you reflect on that, maybe talk to in your groups, and then feedback. Right, so you guys have had some great ideas about factors to consider, and most of these you've already come up with. I'll just go through some key factors that I've written down here. It does matter the frequency of moves. There is a lot of research that just talks about the frequency of moves and the number of losses and the number of time that cycle, they go through that cycle. So we'd want to know a little bit more about Sophia's story of her transitions. The reasons the family moved and their approach to it. Was it a family approach? Was it something that they all decided? Was it something they were told? These kind of give more insight into the transition process itself. Unresolved emotions from the move. We talked about that, of just how she maybe has dealt with some of the process of in the range of emotions that come with moving. Cultural aspects and culture shock. We've got a couple different things to consider here. With one is the Spanish culture. So what is it about the Spanish culture that we need to consider? as well as culture shock in a new place, moving to Dubai, and we'll come back to that, cultural adjustment. Language is an issue, and we don't know the level of language. We don't know what language, how many languages are spoken, what's spoken in the home, and so on. We assume it's Spanish, but there is obviously a language barrier potentially that could be impacting this. Social skills, obviously another academic, other skills that might come up in making it challenging for her to adjust. Adolescent development, so the developmental years, she's 14 years old. What's going on in her, what stage is she as she's going through this? What's important would be the social connections and her building her identity. So those are something that most 14-year-olds are going through, but on top of that, she's going through this transition. And obviously factors of identity, her family life, parents' relationship, divorced, together, any family history, anything like that. And then grief and loss. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about grief and loss today. But as we go through and consider these factors, I'll just touch on the cultural adjustment curve. You may have already seen this, but as you look at this, where would you think, just put in the chat box where you would think that Sophia might be along this curve, if we count these as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Where might she be in her adjustment? Okay. Seeing lots of 2s and 4s. Yeah. So basically, we know that she's on a dip. She's struggling. She's in a dip. Probably came initially, felt like vacation. Everything was new. She's in the honeymoon phase, and not quite sure yet whether she's had any sort of surface adjustment yet. It's only been 6 weeks, so I would say, just from what we know, perhaps it is, she is still at that second stage, but it's possible that she did go through that first dip pretty quickly and made a surface adjustment, and now is confronting deeper personal issues. We don't know how fast, kids will go through this. We don't know everything about her story. So either one of those really could be possibilities in her cultural adjustment curve. But the key, I think, is also just recognizing that this is going on in the backdrop as well. So we've got a lot of things going on in the backdrop, including her developmental stages, the cultural adjustment to a new place. And another area that's going on in the backdrop is the stages of transition cycle. Now, this is something that David Pollock has put together, and you can see some of these same patterns where you start off from involvement, knowing where you fit. Then there's the news of the leaving, so you begin to think away from sort of being mentally present and starting to think about where you will be. You maybe lean away from your friends and begin to separate. And then there's the transition stage where you're kind of already in the new place but not yet fully established. You don't know where you fit. It's a very unsettling time. And you're physically present but not necessarily emotionally. Then you have the entry, or this would be similar to, say, like an acceptance of moving forward to accepting the new place, and also others beginning to accept you and understanding where you fit. And then re-involvement, obviously, is the hope that there would become a sense of comfort of where you fit. Others would know where you fit, and you begin to be mentally present in your current location. So as you look at these stages of transition cycle, this is going on as well. I want to give you a little bit more information on the case study, and then I want you to think back to where maybe in this transition cycle you might find Sophia. So during the first session, you discover that this is Sophia's first move abroad. So there we go back to number of moves. So this is her first one. Gives a little bit of insight. She spent all her life in the same small town in Spain, had the same friends since she was young. Spanish is spoken in the home. While her English is at a fairly good level, she feels she cannot express herself socially. She's in WhatsApp groups at home with her friends in Spain and feels she's missing out. She feels everyone dislikes her in her new school and thinks she is dumb. When she's tried to make friends, something always goes wrong. She's incredibly self-conscious and is often unable to make it through the day. So quickly give me some feedback. Where is Sophia in the stages of transition cycle? Yeah, she is sort of right in the middle of it. She is there, but she's not yet assimilated. She's not yet accepted. So she is physically present, but she is emotionally elsewhere. As we go back to this, we see that probably she is still early in the stages of the cultural adjustment. And because it sounds like she hasn't made any connections yet or adjustment. When we look at the reasons, it's for Dad's job. Language is a barrier. It's an insecurity. Social skills, so this is an interesting one. She's always just had friends and been the popular kid. So learning to make new friends is not something she's had to do often in a small town in Spain. So yeah, there's a few factors that come out in there. So, why do you think that understanding where she is in this transition cycle would be important for learning how to help?